Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I have nothing behind me, but we have a new Jeep on the channel. It's also not mine, but I'm a horrible influence. Jacob got a postal. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Jacob's back with his 2004 right-hand drive TJ Wrangler, and even though you can't see it on camera, the rear is actually lifted up right now and the front is sagging. Kind of looks like a drag car, so we are going to put some Rancho RS55128 shocks on the front end and see if we can kind of get rid of some weird tire wear we're beginning to notice. So let's get to work.
So originally we thought that the shocks were the cause for the weird wear on the tire. Comes to find out, upper ball joints. We're gonna have to find some new ones.
All right, everyone, it's been a couple of days since the wheel came off and Jacob discovered that he needed ball joints. Now, all these parts were supposed to get here on Saturday, and unfortunately, all the ball joints did not get here until today. So Jacob cannot be here for a couple more days, so I'm gonna go ahead and start working on his Wrangler, replacing the shocks and the springs with stock replacements, because right now the front end is pointed down a little bit, so we're trying to bring that ride height back up. Then I'm also going to work on removing the bad ball joints and replacing it with some new ones that Jacob had gotten off of Amazon. So let's get to work. I've jacked up the Wrangler, removed the front wheel and tire, and I'm supporting the Wrangler with a jack stand on the frame. So the suspension is floating right now. All the components are just as low as they can go. So the first thing we have to do is disconnect the brake caliper, and then we'll be able to remove the front disc brake. All right, the next thing we need to do is remove this cotter pin. Then we're going to remove this cap, and there should be a spring washer underneath of it, and then we are going to loosen the axle nut with the 36mm socket. Okay, we were able to get the nut off with the impact. There's another washer in here. There you go. Now, the wheel bearing assembly is all one piece, and there are 3 bolts holding it in on the back side. It's kind of in a triangle shape, so there's one here, and one here. So I'm going to just stick a wrench, or I should say a socket wrench with a socket on it, loosen the bolts, and then we're going to be able to pull off this entire bearing assembly. Now we should be able to just grab this entire assembly. That is the dust shield and the bearing. And as worn as all these components are, I want to check it. This bearing feels good. Normally I would say go ahead and replace it if you're already this far in, but we are working on a budget here, so we're just replacing what we absolutely have to. And again, that upper ball joint is shot. So next, you're gonna pull your front drive shaft out. This would also be a good time to check the U-joints in your front drive shaft. Unfortunately enough, these feel fantastic. Again, we're doing this on a budget, so we're gonna leave those alone. Okay. Next step in the process, we're gonna remove the cotter pin, remove the nut, then we're gonna actually flip the nut upside down, because one of the tricks you can do is sometimes you can lightly tap on this because the bore is tapered. So if you get it just right, it will come out. The other trick is to take 2 hammers and hit each side of this steering arm, and sometimes that will pop the tie rod end off. If neither of those works, I actually have a tool that will push the tie rod end off. So, time lapse. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is remove the cotter pins off the caster nuts on the upper and lower ball joint. Now that we have the two cotter pins removed, we're now going to remove the caster nuts on the upper and lower ball joints. Alright, now that we have both caster nuts loose, we're going to leave them on and hit the steering knuckle with the hammer to pop it off. Now that we have the steering knuckle off, we are going to use a ball joint removal tool to first remove the upper ball joint and then the lower ball joint. Alright everyone, we're now going to take our new lower ball joint. We're going to loosen the cotter nut. We're actually going to remove the boot because we don't want to damage it. We're going to take the adapter from the kit, slide it over like this, because now we're going to be pressing firmly on the outer housing of this lower ball joint. Alright, now that we have the two ball joints in, I'm going to work on disconnecting this sway bar link so I can replace the spring. Alright, I realized before I replace the sway bar end link, I need to go ahead and remove the shock and put on the new one, so that's what we're going to work on. Alright, we have the spring on, we have the shock on, we have the new sway bar end link on. Now we're going to reattach the steering knuckle to the axle. The steering knuckle's back together. We're going to go ahead and put the axle back in and the bearing back on. So now that the ball joints are back together and everything looks good, we're now going to reassemble this part here. So we're going to put the washer on, the lock nut, then the ring and the cap. All right, everyone. Jacob went out and got new hardware for the brake caliper. We were able to get the right hardware by pulling off one of the bolts off of my Rubicon, and we noticed the stock bolts are 10.8 and what they put on here as a replacement was 8.8, which just won't do. So now we're going to reinstall the caliper onto his driver's side wheel assembly. All right, everyone, we're going to just end up ordering a new drag link tube, and we're going to reassemble the tie rod ends and everything once that gets in here. So we are going to reassemble what we have, which I normally wouldn't recommend doing, but we're going to be replacing it soon anyway, and it gets the Jeep back on the road for a few days. So we're going to reattach the tie rod here, and then we're going to put the wheel and tire back on, set it on the ground, and move to the passenger side. What we're actually going to do, so we have more room, I'm going to open the shop up. Jacob's going to pull the Jeep out and reverse it back in, and I'm going to get him to be as close to that side as possible so we have as much working area over here. So,
Excellent.
what he said. Alright guys, I'm running low on space on my SD card, so I'm not going to film and commentate on this entire thing like I normally do. So real quick, we're going to remove the wheel, remove the brakes, remove the rotor, remove the axle nut, remove the wheel bearing, disconnect the tie rod, remove the steering knuckle, remove the original ball joints, and then reassemble. Alright everyone, truth be told, this took 2 nights and a half of the day. This fought us. I mean, you could tell this was 240,000 miles of what seemed like original parts. So leave a comment down below. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. If you didn't, you know what to do. And hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you have, as always, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. And we'll see you in another video very soon. Goodbye.